Hello, I'm Vito Quaglia. Welcome to A Matter of Principle, a podcast where we talk with folks about leadership in school, sports, and the business world. Today, our guest is Lindsay Griffin-Boylan, the president and CEO of the Greater Wyoming Valley Chamber of Commerce. Welcome, Lindsay.
Thank you, Vito. Excited to be here with you today. And thank you for having me.
Thanks for giving us the time. As we just, wade into the interview here, why don't you tell the folks a little bit about yourself, a little bit of the Lindsay story? How did you get to be where you are today as the president and the CEO of the chamber?
Yeah, definitely. I think I have an interesting pathway. Definitely wasn't a, straight line to, the role that I am really excited to have today. But I am raised in NEPA. So my family and still is in Whitehaven, Pennsylvania. So I was a Hazleton girl for, my high school portion there. And I was one of the people that was like, hey, I might want to leave the area. And I did that after high school. I went to LaSalle University in Philadelphia, and I was in business and communications there, and really loved my time, loved the experience of kind of being able to live in the city at that point in my life, and got some really cool experiences out there, met a lot of great people. And, through I actually had an internship with the Philly sports team. So that was something very cool. Really wasn't sure of my direction of what I wanted to do with my degree. And, so I took a job there doing their events and marketing. And that was really my first taste of like events. And I think things that now I've learned in my position now, why I really loved that was it was like bringing people together. I loved that. I loved seeing everyone, collectively in there rallying for their sports teams. And at that time, obviously the Sixers and the Eagles when I was having that experience. And it was just the coolest. And I think that translated for me when I really at that point then also was like kind of missing this area. I missed my family. I missed a lot of things that NEPA had to offer. The kind of the close knit was the place I grew up. So I did move and I started working here in Wilkes-Barre, which was at that time Wachovia, now is Mohegan, Pennsylvania. And I started there as a marketing and events assistant and really got some great experience, got to see a lot of cool things. And again, it was that whole, didn't really know it at the time, but it was the bringing people together, being a part of something bigger than me, showing the great things that we have in a community and really celebrating that. So I worked there for a bit, had a wonderful time and wonderful bosses and mentors that always encouraged me. When casino opened in Mohegan, Pennsylvania, at the time I applied for a job there in a leadership position as a marketing manager, and really wanted to be part of that because it was this great new economic development project that was coming to the area. And I was in the initial phase of that when it opened up, and I was very lucky to have a role there and a great team alongside it for about 4 years. And again, I think I kind of need more and more of that leadership. And that time I thought it was base. And so I did take up as the director of events for Genetti Hotel and Conference Center. Got to work alongside Genetti for almost 10 years, do all of the events, social, corporate, and again, just working with people and being, part of these big celebrations and great events in the community. And one of the events I did was actually the Chamber of Commerce dinner. So my predecessor at the time, Wico Van Genderen, met me through the chamber annual dinner, and I was planning it and got to really interact with them. And that night I had people that were receiving these awards for their leadership and community and emerging businesses. And I just really thought it was the coolest thing. And I just became very interested in the chamber side. And I was also very lucky at that time. Mr. Genetti was always an extreme community minded man. He had me involved in a lot of things. So I wasn't just working there, but it was very important to him that I was also involved in the community, and he encouraged that for me. So at that point, my predecessor at the time said, Lindsay, do you want to come over to the chamber and plan our events? And I said, absolutely. And I started at the chamber almost 8.5 years ago, programs and events manager. I saw all the other sides of the organization, economic development, community development, why it was important that we were bringing you to the table. And I really wanted to be a part of that in a bigger way. So I worked up to director level, became a vice president about 4 years later. And then Wico was looking towards retirement, and I was given the opportunity to step up as the chamber president, in 2021. And I was extremely excited for that. I always say it's a cool thing for me too, because our organization this year, we're actually celebrating 140 years. So we've been around since 1884, and I'm the first woman. And I think that is such a cool thing that I had the opportunity to step up. I always say at the time I was also a young professional. First time a young professional came into that role. I'm aging out of that as I
Huh.
here. But for me, it was an amazing opportunity. A lot of my team has been with me and sort of grew up with me there. And so for me, coming from that background and really learning all these different things and then being given that opportunity and, now be able to lead the organization into this next phase has been, incredible for me. So my journey was definitely not a straight line, but it's one that, now I realize again with this sort of events and where I wasn't sure of where I wanted to go. I just knew that I loved bringing people together and I loved people doing things collectively. And it totally makes sense to me now why I was drawn to this role and why it's one that I love.
Well, I mean that's a really cool kind of origin story, for all the Marvel or superhero fans out there. But I mean, and not just are you a leader in the community, but I mean really like an innovator. Breaking the glass ceiling, being the first woman, doing it at such a young age is really awesome. In that part of your own story, and there's actually two. As you were talking, there's two almost family connections in what you said. My cousin worked at Genetti's, back in the day, and he ended up going
Yep.
out to the West Coast and became, before COVID and everything got off kilter, he was HBO's party planner. I mean, anytime HBO had
Whoa.
something going on after the Golden Globes or whatnot, my cousin Billy Butchkevich was the person that put all that together with all the Hollywood big shots and all the glam and all that. So, and he started, with Mr. Genetti at Genetti's, kind of learning, how to bring people together and promote things. So it's kind of wild that you guys had the same kind of starting point. And then also
So we have a lot of great alumni. So there's
right?
a lot of great people in leadership positions. And if you ask someone, they're like, I worked at Genetti's back in the day. And, I think, and that's very cool too, because HBO and Wilkes-Barre birthplace of that, right? So
Yep.
that's actually a very cool story,
Mm-hmm.
full circle story there. But I always say this as like, if you've ever worked in hospitality, I was like, do anything in this world. I think hospitality workers are equipped to kind of handle
Oh yeah.
everything. So I always give a shout out to my hospitality friends because we're pretty much can solve any problem. And, I think it's such a good skill set to have. So,
You learn how to deal with people. Anytime you're in that service industry, you become humble quickly, and you learn how to deal on your feet with tornadoes that happen, when you think you did everything right and then all of a sudden it's not right and you have to fix it in a millisecond. So yeah, that's a skill set.
Yep.
You never lose. Now,
Yes.
what is it like to lead? We've talked to people on this show who are, classroom teachers or building principals, superintendents, coaches, things like that. But how do you lead a chamber of commerce? It's a very unique kind of thing. There's only so many one in each community really. And not only do you have your own little team that you're working with, but then all the members of all the, everybody across the region, see you as that person out in front doing whatever you can to promote all of them. So what's it like to lead, a group of people like that?
Yeah. I mean, I think that's, always been a challenge for me. And I think one that's a good challenge. I do think that, one of the things that I do think that makes me a good leader in this position and one I'd like to think is that I am able to see multiple things. I definitely come from a place of understanding of sort of all different types of people coming to the table and trying to get to consensus. I think that's something that I've really learned in this job and I've really had to grow with and I still work towards this day. I mean, I think that you have all these multiple aspects of a community where, we have we have our legislative side of our, like we said, our business community side of things. We have community members, we have profits, we have, really everyone that's involved in a community. And that's a large group of people that really are trying to do things in a, trying to do good things and want things to be better. But how do you get them to all kind of sit at the table together, talk about it, and to really have impact from those conversations? And so I think that for me, it's learning to be, some of the things about myself that I think are, really things that I could bring to the table as far as being to, again, listen to others, listen to multiple perspectives, have everybody feel comfortable to sit at that table. I think that's one of the biggest things that I really wanted to bring to this job was that, I think when I sort of came into this world and, I say I necessarily felt comfortable sitting at some of those tables or that I wanted to voice my opinion. And so I think, and it wasn't anything that anyone was doing. It just was that I think it was getting more different people and more people collectively feeling like this is their community. They can do something. Their voice matters. That's a big piece to me that is probably one of the biggest things I hope I can bring to this job is that, everybody's community should have a voice and they should have a platform that's comfortable, to be able to be a part of that momentum. So I think for me, that's the kind of leader that I definitely feel like I am growing into, that's my unique thing that I can bring to it. And I, consistently learn from other people. I have a lot of amazingly smart people in this area. And, I always want to learn from them and make sure that we're all going to this next place together. So that's a big piece of me. That's how my team is. That's how I lead my team. And I have an incredible team, feels the same way. And so I think that's been the biggest thing to me as in my leadership role. And, I'm learning that. I'm learning to get a little tougher, more resilient, because I think that's a challenge too, is that I really do think sometimes I have to stand by, truly believe in and push those things forward, knowing that that's not always going to be positive and you should never read the comments in the newspaper. But, I think I can bring that perspective and that different kind of leadership to our organization.
Well, it goes back to something I remember when I was a little kid. My grandmother, Olympia Quaglia, would tell us, God gave you 2 ears and 1 mouth. It means you should listen twice as much as you talk. So I think that idea of listening to all those perspectives and kind of making the best decisions with your team based on all the information you gather. And then, hey, guess what? 2 weeks, 2 years down the road, if you have additional information, you have to pivot and do some different things. And that's what you do. And that's kind of how leadership evolves. But having that kind of patience to wait a beat and gather everything before you go. You don't want to be a bull in the china shop and say, hey, we have the perfect plan, the perfect mission statement. We're going to go after it. And then all of a sudden you realize, we have to, kind of retreat. So no, you definitely have the right mindset to have all those moving parts and all those different personalities going in one direction is really a challenge. And it seems like, you're doing a great job with it. Now, one of the things we've talked before, when I was in different school leadership roles, and the connection and the partnerships and the programs between the chamber and the schools. And one of the things, and I kind of get on my high horse here a little bit, is, and not to say the chamber, but local businesses over the years. And I'm an old guy, right? I've been in education for over 30 years. And sometimes local businesses would take the stance that, well, the kids coming out of the high school don't have the skill set to be, successful here and there. And my argument, I started to push back myself and I say, well, look, the colleges all come in and recruit our kids, and the military branches all come in and recruit our kids, and they're giving them, swag, and they're talking to them all the time. But yet the businesses don't come in. You don't come into the schools. You don't talk with our kids. You don't, you have to make that connection. It's not just you're not going to wave a magic wand, and then when they get their high school diploma or their advanced credentials, they're going to be perfectly set up for you. So, and I think that's how it was years ago. I think it's definitely evolved, and there's more partnerships and programs going on. What are some of the things that you have, since you've been at the chamber, that you've seen between, those partnerships between the schools and the chamber?
Yeah, I think that's been one that's been, definitely a huge shift, and one I'm so happy to see, and I think is going to be so impactful. And I know you're a huge, supporter of that, and have always been really working towards that connection, because it's the one that's going to get us to where we need. I think, just as much as I talked about, the perspectives and, kind of getting everyone to those places of consensus and moving forward. I also think that, alongside of that comes kind of this thought too, that I think sometimes we weren't having all the voices needed at the table. So I think that's why for me, it was to bring that, because our community is very diverse. We have many different people that are involved, like all the different programs that we're doing and trying to get there. And I think, sometimes also that with listening to others, and it also comes that we do have to innovate right now. And I do think that I'm a big fan of innovation. I think that do things the way we did them. I think sometimes you have to be disruptive, right, in your leadership to be able to get to the places we need to. So I think one of my other big things that we work hard towards is collaboration. And I think that that's something that sometimes, is a little challenging, right? We all have our things and our little silos, and we're doing our own programs. And I think that has to be disrupted better. And I mean that in a really great way, but I do mean it in a way that, things drastically shifted after COVID. We know that our students are faced with, this was a very challenging time for them with learning loss and all the challenges that were going on, the challenges with our teachers, and, how challenging that time was for them as well. So for us, it was important to say, okay, we got to kind of look at what's happening. How can we make this better? And truthfully, how can we get to where we need to for these kids that really need that guidance of what jobs are there? How do I, kids are looking at things differently. now. They're saying, hey, I might, go on this path if it's going to cause me debt and student loans, but whatever my path, I need to know how to get there in a way that I'm going to come out of that and be able to, have a very family sustaining wage job and be able to live my life. And so I think for us, it was about really kind of putting things together, inviting people to come into that. People that wanted to said, we essentially one of the great things that we are, currently working on and going to continue on the path is a program in our county that is Loser Learns to Work. And essentially it is a collaboration of, 8 partners now that all work in this sphere, but we're doing it together, right? We're looking at things like we're not here as a chamber to say we are going to do every single piece of workforce development. That's impossible. And certainly, we want to help strengthen those that are already doing some of this great work. And we want to work directly with the schools and the teachers. And we want to help them right now and work together on this. So the system's cool because it's a collaboration on on a level of which anyone that's offering something in this sphere, we can now put that in front of our students, our teachers, our parents, educate, everybody in the area about all these great opportunities and how to get there from A to Z so that these kids have a really great chance at having a very successful future. So for us, it's more times you got to force that a little bit because you have to say, hey, we want you all to come to the table, but this is the way that we're going to, be able to really impact things and put everybody together instead of working independently. And, that impact is one that hasn't been successful, right? Or if it was, we wouldn't, be facing some as we did. So I think it's about doing it together, making it bigger, making it full, and providing that sort of pathway that we can show kids like, hey, there are a lot of great opportunities here in Luzerne County. There's businesses here that you don't even know about and things that are happening and, amazing. I mean, any industry you could think of. And, even if we talk about something like manufacturing, it's not what they think. The narrative of, but we also have tech jobs. We thought there's all these awesome, amazing opportunities and, ones that I learn about every day. And I think that's why I'm excited about my job because I get to see it. How do we give that to everybody so that they can see these opportunities and connect with them and get to where they need to get, is really one of our passions again, solving this problem, but it's us inviting the smartest, the other extremely intelligent, passionate people and partners that are doing this work as well into it and saying, we're all going to support each other and we're going to each play our part, making sure that we are providing the best pathway forward for our young people to be able to be successful, given all the challenges we've all had throughout the years. So it's exciting. And I think that it's one that we keep seeing more partners come onto and more momentum. And, my most exciting thing is that, getting to see these kids that, definitely had their challenges over the past few years and, getting them excited about and showing them that, there is a bright path for them. And, any part of that way is just one that we're grateful to. And, we'll continue to drive that.
And I think, two of the things that have to happen with all the innovative mindset that you're talking about is we have to kind of lose that stigma of CTCs and manufacturing, things like that for maybe a generation ago, everyone said, well, that was kind of, that's where people went because they weren't academically successful. So they went over here. And that's something schools have been grappling with now for more than 10 years, is trying to show that you could be so successful and have a really rewarding career, financially stable career in this pathway.
Absolutely.
But in the 60s, 70s, 80s, that wasn't the way it was. And then also the other side of it is really a 4-year college degree isn't what it once was. It's not the magic, pill that's going to give you a successful career for 35 years. So there's different ways to get there, whether it's, we have at the school I'm at right now, every year we have 6, 7, 8 kids that end up graduating high school also with an associate's degree because they've been, getting college courses during their high school years. And then they're ahead of the game a little bit. And then we have, other kids who are at some, getting credentialed to walk right out and have a job right after graduation. So there's so many different things. And I think what we, all of us collectively need to do is kind of promote that even more because, communication is something we're going to talk about in a couple of minutes, but it's so different now. Kids aren't really going to be churning out paper resumes. Their resume and their tale of who they are is going to be on their LinkedIn or going to be on their TikTok video to say, this is all the stuff I do. And this is how you're going to get a job in the future. And I think that's completely foreign to parents who are in their 30s, 40s, 50s that
Yep.
didn't do things like that. So that's something that it's incumbent upon all of us to kind of show them this is if you want to be successful in 2024 and beyond,
Yep.
these are the things we need. And that's you're hinting on all those things there, but it's so hard. Like, leading in the time of change. That's something I was going to ask you. You talked about COVID and whatnot. I'm sure you come in when you did, which was going to be a challenge. And then you're still on the couple of years after COVID, which really impacted businesses, schools, everything. So like trying to be that lead. I love the word disruptive. I mean, I think that's awesome. You have to be, positively disruptive. You just don't want to be a character of chaos, but you have to kind of, you challenge the status quo like you're doing and get things happening. Now, one of the things that we hear about a lot in school is the term college and career readiness, which I want to hack off the first part of that and just basically say it should just all be career readiness, because college is a way to get to a career, right? But it's not the end all be all. So that's something that I think is really new. And I think it goes to the point of getting to people where they're at, meeting people where they're at. And this is a long way around to getting to the point where, I know where my wife works, they actually, they talked about, and they did bring on influencers. I mean, believe it or not, there's, people get hired because their social media platform has X amount of followers, and they know that if they have those people involved, their message is going to be sent out to so many more. So, and I don't think parents know that. I think they think, that my kid's wasting too much time watching YouTube videos. They don't realize there might actually be a way to make money, for your son or daughter doing things like that. Not to say that everyone's going to do that, but it is an avenue. So things are changing so drastically. And that's going to go to my question. How do you balance at the chamber the traditional ways that work and the traditional partnerships and kind of things that you've been doing with all these crazy new things out there? Like, what do you guys do? Do you have like a team of people that are just looking towards the new stuff? Or do you kind of just sit back and watch how everything evolves? Because there is a difference, right, between the tried and true ways of things that work in the area and then trying to get all these, new things. You know what I mean?
Yeah, I mean, I always say it's kind of funny because I said we're 140 years old, but I say this in the team all the time that we are like a startup, right? We were an organization that rooted in, at the time I always say our chamber did what was necessary for where our community was at the time, right? Meeting everybody where they're at. So at one point that was saving our land and developing our industrial parks. It was, both kind of what was needed. And we have a very cool history of doing that. And I think, post, kind of during the time of COVID, it was interesting because I think, again, we had to completely reinvent who we were. And that's really what we did. We rebranded ourselves to, what you kind of see now. Our tagline is Elevate the Valley. We went to the greater Wyoming Valley of Commerce to really be representative of our community as a whole, because, again, we knew that we needed that broader, more regional outreach to be able to encompass everyone that was ecosystem and also some of the programs we had, make sure that they were accessible to as a whole. At that time, it was COVID resources, but what it's led to is kind of this collectiveness of, our young professionals network, which is 500 plus strong, our DEI council that is doing incredible work in the community. So for us, it was reinventing really. It was, and yes, I mean, we have that kind of side of it where we have to keep what is the chamber? What is the mission? So it is that kind of what we're rooted in, but what does that mean now? And what that meant is that this was all the challenges that we had, this was an opportunity to really come out of that stronger, as every community in the world, struggled with that. It's what does that look like for us now in NEPA, and how do we really move that? So I think it's always keeping that deep rooted mission of what the chamber is and staying true to that. But it is now, that means something completely different. Our industrial parks are completely developed. You know what I mean? That's a side we can come out of. We can really be proud of that and see what's about this area. We have incredible flux of residents to this area because of our wonderful quality of life and, recreation and different things like that. So for us, it's how do we take all this now and how do we move it into the next place? And to your point of how do we do that? I mean, we're constantly watching and I'm constantly looking at what is the need for us to be at it, still mission driven, what ties into who we are and how do we innovate that? Our chamber's huge on pilot programs. So essentially we look at that problem and we're very entrepreneurial and innovative in the way of saying like, hey, we're going to try to come up with a really cool solution to this and see how we can, be the ones that bring this together. Maybe that's something we continue to do or we pass it off to the right partners that are able to do that. But I think for us, I have to looking at what are the challenges? Where can we be the most impactful? We never reinvent the wheel. If someone's doing that great work, it's wonderful. We join them, we support them. But if that work isn't being, maybe done or the impact isn't being seen yet, where do we come in as the convener? How do we lead that? So like the workforce program I talked about, and kind of exactly to your point, like it is a partnership of LinkedIn. So we're meeting kids where they are. Technology is taught in schools. It's accessible to everyone, something they can keep their whole career. It, gets them onto those systems as well as our career link. So we build them into that platform and they can take over 22,000 courses online to see where they want to be at. And then we do link local, data. Terry Elms, our great friend at the Institute, is able to say, listen, this is where Luzerne County is going in the next few years. And these are the careers that are really going to be, this is what's here. This is where you can be successful. And to your point of like, we have all these great programs now of, like you said, the credentialing, the dual enrollment. These kids are looking at things different and they just need to see these opportunities, and we need to connect them in a better way that they see their pathway of, whether that is that we will need some kids that go on to the higher education. Well, what is here? How do they get there? What are these degrees looking like? Working with our local higher ed partners, but also the kids that are ready to come right out in the workforce and work in our trades and work in some of these really impactful careers in the area. I mean, we want to provide that for both. So need it. It's a really cool way, like you said, of educating all those different people and parents of like, I think, I'm a, first in sport, didn't go on to college and I think small business owners. So even for me, it was hard for them when I graduated to say, Lindsay, this is what's here and this is, where to go with that. So I think I always say well, I'm glad I got that, the time after college. I mean, this is an area that now I'm so passionate about, and I kind of wish I knew all those opportunities here, right? Of what I could have done when I came out of school. So I think being able to give that is one of the coolest things. And I think right now what's interesting about sort of how it was prior and where we're going is even businesses, I think they get like, we want to be a part of this workforce development because we know getting kids when they're younger, building the skills that we want into them and really building our workforce is going to be the better way to go with it. So they're invested. They want to come to the table. It's definitely a shift that we only saw after, we saw more so for sure. So I think that you have this really interesting mid-time where we do have that's how we always did it, but we also have that, hey, I'm really interested in what, it could look like if we change that up. And I think you have more people now on the side of that want to change it up and want to be a that. And that is the most exciting part of what I get to do now is working with those people and new people that come to the table that have these great ideas and seeing where we can really take this community. So I think we have a lot of great things that were in place, but it's really enhancing them and taking them to the next level and thinking outside of the box on a daily basis. We're never afraid to try anything at our organization. Like I said, I tell the team we are a 140-year-old startup. You have to be entrepreneurial here. We have to be innovative. We have to always be looking at the next thing, and making sure that we are staying ahead of the curve. And that's the best thing we can do for the Wyoming Valley is always staying ahead of that curve and making sure that we are putting ourselves on the forefront of that progress.
And someone to, similarly, my family, I'm first generation, going to school my dad worked in a dress factory. My mom worked in a bank. So they didn't really have that perspective to say, this is what, a college education.
Right.
They just knew, get an education. They can never take it away from you and you'll be better off than we were, kind of thing. That was the mindset back then, but it's definitely evolving now. And then on the next step is now our kids, Joanne and I, our three kids are, out there. Two of them are, our oldest just graduated law school. So she's, at that point in her life.
Oh, wow.
Yeah.
Very cool.
Our middle guy is in law school and our little one, she just finished her first year down at Villanova. So, and then you're looking at through their eyes, they're experiencing the world and they're seeing some places that might be to them more progressive than, Northeast PA, so they're, Dominique, she was at law school at Arizona State. So she's out there in Phoenix and you go to Phoenix and there's 12 buildings being built every other week. And it's one of the fastest growing cities in the country. So she sees that kind of thing. And then she comes home and she sees the traditional way of maybe slow growth, here in Northeast PA. And then you're trying to, you show the pros and cons of both kind of places. But I listen to them and I try to give fatherly advice, but in little pieces because, they only they hear what they want to hear. But I think one of the things that's missing, without getting political, and I know this isn't really where we were going, but I think when young professionals start to get involved and see people that look like them and have the same, maybe common experiences as them in political leadership roles, I think you're going to see even more momentum. Because even, I mean, somebody like you were a younger professional taking over a program like
Mhm.
you did. But, when the mayors and the council members and the elected officials are all, when they're not 70, 80-year-old people that aren't connected to the 20-year-olds just starting their careers. Once that happens, I think it's going to be like a snowball going downhill, because you're seeing it in the career placement. The leadership in the business world are starting to, there's a next generation. And I think when that next generation hits home across Northeast PA, in a lot of communities, there's a lot of, younger politicians and elected officials getting involved. And I think that's what's missing, because just from my own perspective, when my kids are away, our son's in San Francisco, and they see things going on in progressive areas, that's the one thing that's missing. You know what I mean? I know that's not anywhere that you guys really get involved with on that side, but how do you,
Well, I think we totally do. I mean, I think that what's interesting is that was the point of our young professionals group. I think people thought, like, I always say I was in professional when I started that. I was, 34, and I was like, hey, I'm becoming vice president. Like, and I think the whole goal with that was always that it wasn't that we went out and had cocktails, right? And I think
yeah.
that's what people thought. It was exactly what you said. I mean, we need to get different people and more people up. Actually, no, in NEPA, we don't have our population is aging, right?
Mm-hmm.
We don't have the workforce of the future if we don't start retaining and recruiting, right?
Mm-hmm.
So we need to empower these young people, because we know that that's a fact of this. The next generations coming up are super exciting to me, because they will be the most entrepreneurial we'll have ever seen. And by that, I mean that they're so socially minded, want to live in communities that they have a voice and they can be active in, because and if they don't have that, they will leave. They will go somewhere where they feel that. And so for me, that was starting it with that we had mixers. It was that these people felt, and these young people felt like, hey, this area is one that I can have a voice in, that I can be a leader in. And so that's why we really started doing that, started recruiting more people onto our boards, getting them involved outside of the chamber, right? And leadership is on boards, on committees, because we know that they will literally live in areas that if they don't feel that, they will not stay there. They will not buy a house there. They won't start their family. So that to me was the biggest part of that. And I mean, and when you talk about on the ship level, I mean, I think it's a quote that hangs in my office, be the change you wish to see in the world. I mean, I think that I was, there's those people that can sit there and say, hey, NEPA isn't progressive, or we don't have these things going on. You could be that person, or you could be one that says, I'm going to be the one that then makes that change. And there's people stepping up and doing that. And I think that that's what I chose to do. That's what my team chooses to do every day. That's what a lot of the other leaders I work with choose to do every day. So I think you could side to that. And I know the side I'm on, but I think that more people, I know it's challenging. I know that it is a time that a lot of work is required, and got a tough skin sometimes in that, but like, especially if we talk about the political world, but yeah, we do need leaders that are going to step up and say, I'm going to do that, and I'm going to be part of that. So that's 100% of something that we do have our government affairs committee as well. And, that's something that we're really trying to encourage also with the young professionals, of like learning about that side of things, and how can you be more involved in where your local, your state, your national, those types of things in legislation, and how can you be a part of that, and be the change you want to see? Because it doesn't just happen, right? It has to be people that are pushing that. And we do have a lot of people that want to be in that role. My goal is that we convene in a way that they feel comfortable learning about it and getting there, because there does need to be more people that are doing that. If not, we are going to see the same things that we tend to see, right? So I think it's getting more people to want to do, us providing them a platform that.
No, and again, exactly. I'm with you 100%. I think there's so many really cool, leadership programs and philosophies happening right around here. And I think what we need to do is sometimes it's hard when you're familiar with a place. It's always that, I want to get pushed out of the nest and go find something else. And that's good. Now it's kind of, evolution of life. We all do it. And then but you don't want to forget that maybe the strengths of what this area is. I mean, is there a difference to selling Northeastern Pennsylvania to people who left to have them come back versus people who aren't from here and trying to recruit them to come here? Is there, like, you ever think about that? Like, or is it the same sell regardless?
No, it's really not. I mean, what's really interesting is, and by the way, we have a very high percentage of what we call boomerangs, right? That could
Mm-hmm.
even be like a meet where I did leave. I was like, oh, and then I was like, came back because I was
Mm-hmm.
like, this is a great place. I mean, we have a lot of those people, especially my age range of the 30s and 40s that are like, hey, came back here because it is a great place to live and raise a family and, recreation and all the wonderful things our area has. So that's a very high percentage of those that do come back and do just that. But I think that it is funny because a lot of times where it's changing the narrative of the area. I think sometimes we're a little bit down on ourselves in NEPA. And I think it's really changing that attitude of like really talking about all the positivity. That's what's one of our pillars in our strategic plan that we added in is this quality of life piece where we have to start to promote ourselves in the way that we deserve to be viewed, right? Our proximity to things, the amount of, great resources we have, our dedicated workforce, this very hardworking area. We rally with a heart, right? I mean, we are a wonderful community. We have a lot going on. I mean, I could be out 8 nights a week. There's 7. It's getting that narrative out to everyone that really starts to shift that. So I think that's a big piece to it because people that come here. So when we are getting companies that are looking for some of those reasons I talked about, our proximity to, the highways and a lot of
Mm-hmm.
around us and all the great things that we have, they don't really need to be convinced. They love this area. If they're like, we love it here. We don't know, you know what I mean?
Mm-hmm.
It's a wonderful place to have our look. It's sometimes more of our own people, right? That maybe are here that haven't seen that 50 yet, that don't really understand some of that narrative. So I think that we are very, the people that are looking at the area feel very positively about it. So I think it's shifting that narrative a lot for both sides. But, selling the area is one that's always this area is one that's always very exciting to me because there's so many positives that, that we're able to offer them here. So it's really us looking at that, like, for ourselves and talking about ourselves in that ways and working collectively to put that message out there on, a larger level. Cause it is, I mean, we have everything here to be successful. Are we going to collectively, really put that together and move forward in the way we need to? The answer is we will, we're doing that, but we always need more people to kind of view it that way.
But it's almost like, Northeastern Pennsylvania, we have everything you need. And if not, it's 2 hours away. I mean, basically
100%.
you can get to every, Baltimore, Philly, DC, even, Boston's not far. And if growing up here, you forget the convenience of all that, because then if you go and you talk to people that maybe were born and raised in different parts of the country who are 6 or 8 hours away from water, you know what I mean? Like, it's one of those things you could jump in the car and go to Wildwood, but if you're landlocked somewhere and you don't see that, you don't realize what it's like. You have all these different conveniences right here. But again, I think the quality of life thing that you hit on is so important because not only are you talking to, businesses coming in and sustaining them here and whatnot, but so many people work from home that, that they could be working for a business in, Des Moines, but they're working in Northeastern Pennsylvania. So it's not so much the business aspect. It's really where they live and what are the things that, they enjoy while where they're living here. So no, I definitely think that it's an exciting time, for an organization like yours, because there's so many new things, but you can capitalize on a tradition like that whole, sometimes we look down on it, that coal miner mentality, but that work ethic and that, like, against all odds, like, we'll persevere kind of, philosophy has gotten us this far, right? And I always go back, I'll talk to somebody like, Anthony Brooks, Tony Brooks about, the importance that Northeastern Pennsylvania plays in everywhere. Like, if it wasn't for the coal in Northeastern Pennsylvania, there'd be no industrial revolution, right? There'd be no, like, and I'm a big
100%.
local history nerd when it comes to that stuff, but like, we know that growing up here, but I think we don't do a good enough job maybe selling that to people that don't know, that maybe didn't pay attention to things in the history books when they were growing up. But there's a vast history to be proud of. And I think there's a lot of innovation that happens here. What you mentioned, like, HBO and so many other businesses that maybe started here and moved on, but it's a hotbed. And I think sometimes people look at it like part of the, the northern area of the Rust Belt, and there's old thinking. Well, maybe there is, but there's a lot of progressive thinking as well. And so I think you guys celebrate that, and I think it's a really cool time for you. So I want to say you're doing a great job, but in a long story short, you guys are doing an awesome job, and keep up the work. A couple of last questions for you. How do you keep yourself from getting stale? I mean, there's so many things you're doing. You guys are so active. How do you keep it fresh and new and keep that energy going?
I mean, I think we're always just kind of, I think our collaboration helps with that in a million ways, because I mean, it's like, you know, getting to talk to, people like you and our partners that we work with, and working with people on the state level, on the national level. Like, I think other people's great momentum for wanting to change and things, really progress is one that's contagious. And I mean, I think it's one that, I will always commit to being a part of. And I think that when you have all these people around that, and we try to surround ourselves with that, right? Like, I think a lot of the groups that I talked about that we have at our chamber, or that, the partners that we're working with, whether it's elected officials or community partners, that's contagious when you're starting to get into those rooms and these people that are excited and moving. So I think for us, it's continuing to work with those other groups, driving what we can, supporting what we can, but again, just being part of that collective group that is on the other side of saying, hey, we're going to be the ones to make that change. That's how we honestly stay committed to what we're doing and our momentum, and stay excited about the work that we're doing, because the other way does not make you excited. It does not fuel creativity. So I think for us, it's really making sure that we're always in that mindset of being part of this greater, this greater momentum for good and progression, and staying connected with that. Like I said, I think we align ourselves with others that are like-minded in that way, and continuously looking at new trends and different things we can do. And again, but we never do it ourselves. We work with other people that are, committed to the same things, and we're always willing to partner on that. So I think that's pretty much how we do it and stay in that mindset.
One of the things, that we do talk about on the show a little bit is school and maybe, impactful people, influential people that we've had in our past. Is there a teacher, maybe from your grade school, high school, college days, that you see as someone who had a big impact or influence on the person you've become? Is there anybody out there?
I think I had a lot of great teachers. I think that I was, like I said, I was always kind of a little unclear on where I really wanted to go. I think that I had some great mentors, though, that throughout school, and teachers that always encouraged me to kind of be who I was. And, so always thinking of them as I kind of progress. And I think more of my mentors came as I entered the work world, and I got to work with some people that, like I said, really were influential on me, that and allowed me to kind of progress forward, and encouraged me to do that, and encouraged me to, like I said, I think what was wild for me when I came into my chamber presidency role was that, 8 years prior to that, I was working the event, in which I was then standing at the podium becoming the president of. Like, that was, but I had people that were like, Lindsay, I sort of said this when I was able to give a speech about getting into that role. I think it was very, very full to me in a way, because, there was people that, not only was one day I was at the table, right, literally as the event planner, but, they invited me to sit at the table. Then they said, hey, Lindsay, start using your voice. And now I was able to stand at the head of it. So I think that those were the people truly that, whilst, I definitely had my mentors in school and teachers, those were the people that I think really encouraged me to be in the role that I am, and helped to motivate me, and giving me that, encouraging me to sit there, and then to get to where I am today. Those are that I think I often think about still when I'm, things are challenging, or, I'm like, hey, I have this, and that's what I want to give to others as well, that same opportunity and the support that comes alongside of that. So.
And I think that's really important, for leaders to help grow the next generation of leaders, right? And that's the thing too, being savvy enough to identify the characteristics in people that will make them good leaders, whether they know it or not. You might have somebody, like you're there working an event, but somebody along the way, or people along the way, saw things in you that they kind of kept nudging you forward. You know what I mean? So I think it's important for anybody in a leadership role to kind of not just make themselves the best version of a leader they can, but also, for those people coming behind. One of the things that we talk about on the show a lot are relationships. And basically, I stole this from other people, but the idea that the more committed you are to a relationship, the more successful you're going to be. And it could be any kind of relationship with your life partner, relationship with your career, anything. And it's really how much you invest and how much you sacrifice, for that success. Do you see that as something that, that's kind of more granular, versus all the things that you guys do programmatically, but through the, whether it's, different things like Leadership Northeast and the programs that you do to raise the individuals. But is that something that you think we need to do more of, communication wise, getting more people involved in leadership? Because I think personally, this is just a Vito thing. I think we need more leaders. I think in this time, especially in 2024, there's a giant shift. Like I said, to me, as somebody who graduated in 1988, I see this world as a place where the people of a certain age were in charge when I was a kid, and they're the ones still in charge. You know what I mean? Like you had people when I was a little kid, 50s and 60-year-olds were in charge, and now 30, 40 years later, it's the same people. And I think there's a void that we have to fill. So that's something that I think you guys do a great job in kind of promoting the leadership aspect. But what can we do? The old, I think it's a marketing thing, the rule of 7. People, you have to have 7 different ways to get your message out there, and people really don't hear anything until you tell them a million times. Do you think we can do more across the board, not just as a chamber, but in our communities to promote leadership?
Yeah. And I mean, we're huge, advocates, and supporters of Leadership Northeast. We have a very cool women's program that's now for women's leadership that alongside of that. But yeah, I mean, I think again, it's, relationships are the basis really of what I do, right? I think that the relationships that you have with people and, again, I think that's such a core part of what I do in my leadership role is that, again, it's not about Lindsay. It's about all these people who, again, like have them feel heard and make them a part of it so that you have momentum. So relationships are, one of the biggest parts of, frankly, I think being a leader. And I think that's something that I really work hard on. I put a lot into my relationships because, again, I just think it's that collective way that we really will move forward. If I was siloed and I wasn't involved in that, that's where things don't, you don't see that progress. So I think it's a huge part of it. I think that that's why programs like Leadership Northeast and, are critical. And I think it's never to please continue your leadership journey in many ways. So I do think it's about what happens after, right? When we take those programs or, we take an online course or like, what's the action step then?
Mm-hmm.
And to me, that's maybe the missing piece of like, let's get you on a board. Let's get you on a committee. Let's get you into, if it's looking at a local, elected position. I mean, I think it's that, how do we take that next step for people it's not just about taking those courses, but it's like, where do you go with that? And I think that's for me, a big passion of like getting more people to take that next step and showing them where that step is and supporting them in getting there. Cause I know that I had people that did that for me and I'm so grateful for that. And I always want to be able to do that for other people because I see what that shift looks like and what that change does. And, so I think it's maybe like you're saying, it's not that we don't have the programs, but like the aftermath of that and how do you keep going on that? That's a big thing that I do think is a cool way that we can continue to kind of ensure that we new people in those roles because it's, it is something that I think we need to do more of.
Well, one thing that I see in schools right now and even in our own family, our young people have access to more information than we ever did. I mean, basically anything that's out there is available in half a second. All you have to do is Google it and you can figure anything out. But what's lacking, and for lack of a better term, is the ability to argue. And I don't mean argue like getting a fist fight. I mean like to debate. For them to persuade someone, for young people to persuade someone to see their point of view, I think is difficult at times because so much of what they do is via text, via email, from a keyboard. They don't have that face-to-face, for, a good confrontation sometimes where you have to say, hey, this is why I think this is important. And then you read the body language of the person across from you or in the room and you kind of see where it's going. And I think that's something that all of us really need. That's a COVID/technology issue where they're, even in my house, sometimes like the phone will ring if there actually a phone rings. And young people don't know how to talk on a phone. They know how to text and they know how to put on speaker and talk from the other room. But just the things that we did, maybe that we just take for granted, they don't do anymore, and I just think those small little, interpersonal skills that come from just, there's nothing wrong with getting in a good hearted argument about something, whether it's the Phillies or the Yankees, whatever it is, and just kind of see where it's going. And I think, and I don't know and whether it's schools having more debate clubs and having, more programs on the community where people actually get together, those mixers and whatnot, and just express point of views on stuff. But I think so much of the divisiveness in the country right now is if you have a different point of view than me, we scream and yell at each other and retreat to our corner and we don't talk. And I think that's a big thing that if we want to move forward in any area, we have to learn, like you keep talking about, getting different points of view, having everybody at the table, but then also, being able to communicate your counterpoint without taking your ball and going home. I think that's an area in the future that we're all going to have to work at, because I see it, being in the school, you see a little bit more, kids don't know how to have a differing point of view without going from 0 to 60, and you see it in the on the news every night. It's the same kind of stuff.
Sure.
And that's not that. I'm not saying Lindsay fix it. I'm just saying that's something that
I don't think I can fix that. No, but I agree with you. I mean, and I think look at how we're, consuming things. And I mean, it's very reactive, right? We see all these different types of things. And I think it is become obviously like very, everything's become very divisive in so many ways. And I think that, you're 100% right. And I think that's one of the things that like I said, I work towards bringing people we can have different opinions, but how are we really working towards hearing both going forward? I know that's something we need to see on much larger level and, but I do agree with you. And I think it's that, we do know that our students were challenged. Like they kind of came, the COVID effects and some of those, like I said, the social skills and the interactions, like, that's why we do have to be in that, right? On that mentor level of like why we want to be involved in workforce development. I mean, working with these kids so that some of those skill sets that unfortunately just weren't, that wasn't a time that you know what I mean? Like that was a challenge for them and helping them to develop that. That's something we all have to be active in because it is a really important piece. And you don't want people to just retreat. And that's what sort of sometimes you see is like, oh, I don't want to get involved with that, right? That sounds like, it's divisive or, we need people to get involved, but it can't be in a way that is aggressive or, so I do see the effects of what that does. And, sometimes if you ask someone, oh, do you want to, run for something or get involved with this? I don't think I could do that. Right. There'd be so much that goes into, I don't know if it's something I could handle or, and you hate to see that sometimes because there's a lot of great people that could be in these roles, but just because of the nature of what you talked about. So I think it's something that I see we have, some great leadership, not only like in our, communities, but on the state level. And you see that mentality. And I see that changing and transforming things. And like to your point, I think that that's where we need to really then again, be mentors to our youth of how do you do those things in a positive way, but they want to see, because we know they want to see it. We know that from their stats of they want to change a lot of things that don't think are going right. They want to be the ones that really make the world better. And how do we help them get there? They want it, but it's how do we do that?
Well, and I think you're in a key role, in your organization at the chamber where you can celebrate everything that we were and are and still, promote that innovation. And I think that's what's really cool about what you get to do on a daily basis, because it's kind of everything, you're almost like, a restaurant that has, grandma's recipes, but you're also, dealing with the most innovative, crazy recipes coming this way. And at the end, you're just trying to feed everybody, right? Everybody who gets involved with what you're doing, they live here. They want this place to be a little bit better maybe than it once was, but they want it to be comfortable. They want to be safe and they want it to be successful. So that's what's really cool about what you get to do. Well, I want to thank you, Lindsay, for giving your time today and having a wonderful conversation. I'd like to leave this open to have you come back, because I think there's so much more we could talk about, and what you do will evolve constantly. So I'd like to catch up with you in the future and see what else is going on at the chamber. But thank you so much.
Thank you. Absolutely. Thank you for having me. And I think you were also, you're someone that definitely, I know you have a really innovative style of leadership as well. So I'm always happy to be